All right, mic check. I'm good. So I'm Max Ceron. Max Ceron, CWB Association Welding podcast. Today we have a really cool guest. Welding podcast.
The show is about to begin.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the CWB Association podcast. Glad to have you guys back with me once again. My name is Max Ceron, and we are here to share another fantastic story from a Canadian welder here in the GTA. Well, they're in the GTA, I should say, since I'm in Saskatchewan. And today we have Michael Pace. Mike Pace, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Max. Thanks for having me on here.
Awesome. And today we're bringing in someone who makes me happy because I love to talk to the welders. And Mike's a welder, and he's coming up, and he's kind of just really starting his career, his path down the journey of what is the steel trades life. And we had a little bit of a conversation before the show, and our hearts might be in the same place, Mike.
Yeah, it sounds like it. You've got a similar background to what I'm starting out at.
Yeah, and that's where we're talking about steel fabrication, which is the love of my life. I loved welding. I loved burning rod and stick and wire and TIG and all that stuff. But when I got into the building side of things and the design and the blueprint world, I really, really found my niche, and I love hearing a young person say that they want to get into that.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's an exciting field to get into, definitely. And yeah, when you say that I'm just starting out, I'm literally just starting out. So it'll be a different perspective maybe than some of your previous guests.
No, and that's great because I've had 3 or 4 now, on the show that have been either fresh out of school and just starting out or, maybe within the first year or 2 of their careers, and I think that that's a great, perspective to get for the listeners. So, let's start off, kind of where we always start, Mike, and let's just start off with who you are. So, if you could give us, the Coles Notes of Mike Pace's life, where were you born and, where did you come up?
That sounds great. Yeah, so I was born in the GTA, just north of Toronto, about 40 minutes. And I went to high school up here. I've lived here my whole life, and started out after high school. I graduated and went straight into art school. So my path has been a little bit circuitous to getting to welding as a career. I went to school and did a degree in illustration and fine art at OCAD in Toronto. I lived down there for a number of years. And from there, I graduated immediately. Started working as an illustrator here and there, although it was a very hard go to get started fresh out of school.
Now,
Definitely a difficult industry.
I'm very interested in that, like
Hmm.
I'm not artistic, but I very much appreciate art. I love art. Um, but there's definitely things that I get and I don't get.
Hmm.
As a young boy coming up, Mike, were you always artistic? Was this something that you knew you wanted to get into since you were a little kid?
I kind of came across it a little bit, not later in life, but in high school. I kind of found a love and passion for art. I had a number of great teachers in high school that really brought that out in me, and really made me want to pursue that professionally. They really, gave me the ins and outs of the industry and told me that, you can make a go of it. It's a hard slog to be an artist, to be an illustrator, to do all that kind of thing. But yeah, they made it seem like it was doable. So it was definitely an exciting industry to get into at the time.
You kind of say that in the past tense term.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I have some friends who are very successful illustrators, graphic artists, media, different types of media artists, but they had a very large hump to get over in their careers before what they achieved what they perceive as success. And
Mhm.
it sounds like you kind of encountered that same hump.
I did. Yeah, for the first couple of years out of school, it was the odd job here and there. I obviously had a full time job outside of that as well, just to pay the bills in Toronto and stuff. But yeah, it was not an easy go for sure. That whole time, I was also working at a production company in Toronto and
Mhm.
learning the ins and outs of some of that construction trade as well. So that is sort of what introduced me to the construction industry in general. Is working there.
You
Um,
know,
yeah.
so you got an arts degree.
Hmm.
You're out there trying to make it, and especially like GTA, like man, there's going to be a tight pack of competition for the same type of gig, and it's always interesting because if you look at a school, and this is something that I've learned as I've gotten older, if you look at a school that teaches X, the work for X around that school is going to be hard to get. Right. And it's just
Yep.
a matter of logistics because anyone that goes to welding school, say in Regina, is going to come out of welding school in Regina looking for a job in Regina,
Yep.
but those jobs are going to be the first ones taken. So, like many, and you're experiencing this now yourself. For many young people coming out of college, regardless if it's welding or arts or psychology or whatever the hell it is, um, you may have to move.
Oh yeah.
to, because it's very hard to find what you just studied, in school that work because in that area there's going to be a lot of people in that
Yeah.
saturated market.
There's a huge influx there for sure, and I found that definitely. I mean, Toronto is the epicenter of design and art probably in all of Canada. I would say. We're the
Well, you're going to
biggest
have some
market
people in
for it.
Vancouver get very upset with.
Yeah, well, Vancouver too, definitely Montreal as well, a huge art center, right? Yeah, so there was definitely a huge amount of competition coming out of school. My fellow classmates and people that have been working in the industry for 20 plus years. I was sort of fighting against in a way.
So then, and I went to college too for something not welding related and ended up in welding.
Yeah.
So like I get that. I went to university for philosophy.
Oh wow.
So it's not like there was a lot of work.
Yeah, I know. You know the struggle. You know the struggle.
I do know. And plus I had kids already. Like I had my first kid in college.
Oh yeah.
So there was a lot of pressure to ante up and start taking care of the family, right?
Yeah, that's an
Now,
immense amount of pressure, definitely.
for yourself now, you said you kind of started working in the construction trades, which is a tough gig itself. Like the constructions are, the construction trades are in many ways different than the steel trades in their layout and format and types of work. There's a lot of different sectors and areas to navigate.
Hmm.
What did you start learning as you started working with the construction trades?
I was working almost exclusively in an office for a production company that did custom staging in Toronto. They're based
Hmm.
straight out of Toronto, and the type of stuff that they would do was all over the place. We would, like for instance, we worked on the big Toronto letter sign that was out front of City Hall. That was us. We worked on the Hockey Night in Canada set. We worked on a number of sports center sets, I believe they were.
Hmm.
So I got sort of introduced to a lot of different aspects of the construction trade working there. So I didn't get to do much of the hands-on stuff, which was unfortunate. But I was working in the office, getting a taste for it, and that is kind of what brought me into it, I guess, originally.
So this path is getting quite meandering,
Absolutely.
and and so now, like I mean, at this point, the only hands-on work you've done is with your art. And actually, I should maybe ask, just to have a clearer picture, what was your favorite medium? Like, what was your go-to for art?
I found a love for painting. I studied illustration, but definitely like the traditional media of painting and drawing was what interested me the most. I didn't get into digital media really. We did some courses in that, but it didn't really strike me as something that interesting at the moment. So I like to get my hands on and
Hmm.
work on something.
Yeah, because I'm trying to connect those dots now because I think that's where the
Hmm.
circle comes around, right? Because first of all, um, any type of construction, whether it's steel or wood or whatever, requires an abstract ability to visualize the end product,
Hmm.
which really sets people aside in terms of their training going forward in their careers. And this is kind of where we're going to loop back because I teach, or I have taught for many years, both the welding program and the steel fab program, the fabrication program, and now also the manufacturing program for innovation. And welding as itself can be very linear and 2D
Hmm.
in terms of your production. But to get into the world of fabrication and then innovation, you must have a very strong grasp of the abstract because you have to be able to visualize products to a fine degree.
Yeah,
And I have had many students come to me from art backgrounds in fabrication and excel because they have that understanding.
I think that's a very good point. And when I finally did get into school for welding, I found a certain knack for it. I think because of that background, exactly what you're saying. Definitely.
So how did that happen then? So you're working at X company designing cool stuff. Sounds like it's a neat job and you're kind of
Hmm.
enjoying yourself.
Yep.
What happened then? Like how did you end up back in school? Let's just start there. How did you end up back
Yeah.
in school and then why welding?
Yeah. Great question. Like you said, I mean, it was a fair bit of meandering through my 20s. There, I spent it a bit lost, I would say. Just kind of working jobs that I had just because I had them, and um, I would say it was a hard decision to finally go back to school. I think what pushed me is my wife kind of talked me into it. I spent the better part of 6 years kind of just wandering around working sort of dead end jobs, and then I finally said to her, "Oh, I'm thinking about going back to school," and she was like, "Do it. Don't even think about it. Just do it. Pick something." So props to her for putting that out there for me. I, welding was one of probably four choices that I had when I was considering going back to school. I was looking at becoming an electrician, a plumber, classic trade school route. Um, and I think what finally sort of sealed the deal for me was going into Sheridan College, where I attended the welding program, and meeting the instructors and being in the shop and just getting a bit of a hands-on view of what I could expect being in school, and having a conversation with those instructors just sealed the deal for me. I was just sold at that moment.
And that's props to the instructors in the program at Sheridan College, which they have a fantastic program.
Absolutely.
They're producing some real top notch talent out of that school, and that's something that every school should be very proud of is the students that they produce.
Hmm.
Um, but that is a very saturated area for welding programs. There is a
It is.
lot of welding colleges. There's a lot of welding programs, and I'd imagine that there's a lot of welders hitting the market, in the same kind of, area demographic slash, geography.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. You went to the school, you signed up.
Hmm.
How did you find the welding program as soon as you walked in? Like now it's go time. You bought the boots, you bought the helmet, you're showing
Yeah.
up for school. You got, how long was the program? Like how long was the course you took?
It worked out to be about 16 months. I started last January,
Hmm.
right before COVID hit, and yeah, I was super excited to get started. A little nervous, obviously, going back to school and to start a new career. In my 30s, not knowing anybody, and yeah, and just it was a little intimidating at first, but I found myself right at home after no time.
And I'd like to ask you these a couple questions about this because this is something that actually I'm working on right now as a project with the association is how to give supports to people that are career transitioning, which I
Mm,
feel is a demographic or a group that gets ignored largely. So, for example, there's always like the you came in right out of high school into a welding program group, and they hit the market as a 21-year-old with low expectations, willing to take any job anywhere for any wage.
yep.
And I find that those students get eaten up very quickly. They get picked up because a company will look at them and say, okay, young, trainable, ready to go, let's do it. And plus low wages, right?
Sure.
And then you have, those people that are coming back that perhaps have been in the welding industry since young but never went to school, and then they're
Mm,
coming back to finish off their certification, so getting their red seal or getting a pile of CWB tickets in order to up their game within their industry.
yep.
But persons like yourselves now midlife career change, this is tougher, and the supports maybe aren't there as much, because you have a higher expectation of wages,
Mhm.
maybe of work environment. You've kind of been around the block. You kind of know what you like and you don't like, which a 20-year-old doesn't,
Yep.
and I'm not slagging the youth in any way. I'm just saying that this is the realities. What were maybe some of the obstacles you felt you had as a 30-year-old going back to school?
Great question. I I would say that the obstacles were sort of um, I don't know. Maybe circle back to that question for a second. Um, I'm trying to think of some obstacles. I had a not a hard go of it, to be honest with you, but
No, it went well.
it did go very well, to be honest. There
Yeah.
were obstacles just in terms of life, um, kind of getting in the way of things. I'm still working while I'm at school. Um, but yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the other two groups as well. That's definitely accurate. Yeah.
So okay, so like you finished school now. So
Mhm.
did you just finish? Like when did you finish school?
I finished actually. My last class was last Friday, so I'm done a week.
So that now you're fresh. Now,
Yeah.
coming out of school, COVID times, world's upside down.
Hmm.
What are the prospects looking like? Like what's did you I mean, I think like most schools we try to get our students to start applying for jobs before they're even done.
Hmm.
But we also pre-COVID were able to do job fairs, bring companies in, do tours of plants.
Yeah.
Did you have access to any of that stuff or any connections?
That was really tough, actually. Yeah. So I mean, going to school during COVID was a challenge in and of itself. I was about 3 months into the program when that happened. I missed a few classes that we were had scheduled, and then in the summertime we transitioned entirely online. So I did all of my math and AutoCAD classes and that sort of thing, which was really great to be able to do that stuff remotely. But yeah, largely we missed out on a lot of that career support
Mhm.
stuff. We still had people who were helping us out throughout the entire thing, some career counselors and that kind of thing that were able to give us a hand while we were studying. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm looking to hit the ground running here, and already had a number of interviews, a number of job offers. So certainly there are a ton of opportunities out there, um, and I'm just kind of opening my eyes now to all of the different possibilities.
Awesome. Well, we're at the halfway mark here, Mike. This is great. I think this is really informative for young people that are looking to get into trades or people that are looking to transition into it. So we'll be back right after this break here with Mike Pace and talking about his journey through school in the welding program and now hitting the ground running as a young or not so young new welder in the market. So we'll stay tuned and we'll be right back here on the CWB Association podcast. And we're back here on the CWB Association podcast. My name is Max Ceron, and we're here with Mike Pace, who's in the Toronto area, talking to us about just graduating out of the welding program and now trying to figure it out, right, Mike? Like now it's go time. You got
Yes.
you got this certificate in your back pocket. You
Hmm.
are a level one, I assume, apprentice now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, what kind of CWB tickets were you able to squeeze out of the school before you graduated, or did you get any?
I was lucky enough to get some. I did three in the fall for my stick and MIG,
Mhm.
and this last couple of weeks of class, they held another round at the school, and I did three more. I've yet to hear back if I passed those, but I'm pretty confident. Um,
Oh, they
so I've
didn't
got
bend them right in front of you and show you they weren't able to?
well, we bent them right before we left, and they look good to me, but you never know. The inspector comes back, and who knows? Who knows?
Well, I don't know who your CSR is, but you better be nice to Mike.
Of course, of course.
And when and for young welders coming out of school, those tickets sometimes are really the deal breakers. I know that before the show you were telling me that you're kind of looking to get into structural as one of your opportunities.
Mhm.
And I know for a fact that the iron workers in the GTA are hiring welders like crazy right now. They actually reached out to to me personally in Saskatchewan to say, hey, if you got welders in Saskatchewan, send them our way. So, I
Wow.
mean, for anyone that's listening, reach out to the iron workers. It's outside work, it's contract work, it can be rough and tumble, but they pay well, fantastic pension, and a great group of guys. I've worked with the iron workers many times in my life. The caveat there, Mike, is
Hmm.
that the iron workers generally require two all position tickets. So your 7018 all position and your flux core all position. Those are
Yeah.
usually requirements to get work with them.
Yeah, that makes sense to me for sure.
Yeah, and so like you're looking to get into structural. I guess what was the process coming out of school? How did you start applying? Where did you start looking? How does that work for a young person in the GTA?
I mentioned before that we did have some career counselors, I guess I would call them,
Hmm.
who have been reaching out to employers for us over the last month or so and sending our resumes out. So I've got a few callbacks about that. Beyond that, I mean, just keeping my eyes and ears open. I spent most of this first week off just browsing the internet postings for positions that are available, reaching out to some local like fab shops and some welding shop owners that I don't know personally, but
Hmm.
that I've sort of come across over the last 6 months or so. Just seeing if they have any work. I really just want to get some experience under my belt and be able to say that I've worked as a welder. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and I always tell every student the first year is the hardest
Yeah.
because it's tough to get out there and get a chance sometimes, and like you just have to be realistic as a company. If you're under a certain size, it's really hard to train, right? Because it really does slow down some of the processes that you're going in.
Hmm.
And if you're looking to hire as a company, it's because you got product that is waiting to go out the door,
Yeah.
right? And so when you want to bring someone in, you want them to just hit the ground and freaking boom go, right?
Yeah.
And so you look at students and you think, how much do I have to invest into that? Which is tough, and it's not impossible, but it's tough. And then the
Hmm.
larger companies that tend to hire lots of the first years are usually the larger manufacturing centers that maybe kind of get a bad rap. And I don't agree with that because I think that's a great place to cut your teeth. And yes, you may be doing a lot of MIG welding, and yes, it might be the same product every day in and out. But you know what? It's all about hours. You can't think about that yet. It's like starting out. It's like, your first day on the job and you want to be the boss. Like it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You got to cut your teeth somewhere. Now, I'm not sure how the manufacturing industry is in Ontario or the Toronto area at this point, but I mean, that would be generally who I would recommend for young welders to go to for their first, job placements.
Yeah. I think that's great information. It's the manufacturing industry in this area seems strong.
Mhm.
From what I can gather, there's an abundance of jobs at the moment. Um, I don't know how many of them are great jobs, but there are a lot of jobs out there. Um, the interviews that I have gone for, the companies that I have spoken to, yeah, mostly in manufacturing at this point. And I think, like you said, they're the ones that are going to be able to, give young people and fresh students the experience that they need right out of the gate.
Yeah, and it always is like, I mean, a career that you nurture and develop.
Hmm.
So, I've worked in manufacturing shops, I've worked on site, I've worked in the field. My personal preference is I don't like working outside. I am kind of a baby about that. I don't like being cold. I don't like being wet. And I did the field work for a while because it was, well, for good money, and it was a great experience. But I quickly learned early on that I kind of wasn't built for it. Some people are just really good at being out in the outdoors and in the harsh environments and kind of thrive in that environment, and
Hmm.
I was not one of them. So
That's understandable for sure. I mean, I've never done work like that myself, so I don't know
mhm.
how I would hack it, to be honest with you.
And you might find a love for it, and it's a
Yeah.
niche market that just pays incredibly well. Like,
Yeah.
these are $5,000 7,000 a week jobs, which are, that's no one's going to sneeze at that, right? um,
Absolutely not.
but there is a lot of sacrifice, and so like I had to decide for myself, where am I happy not thinking about money, and where I was happy is in a shop. And I loved the like kind of the manufacturing sector. I had a mind for it. I had a an idea of how product would flow. I could see it coming in the door and then the finished product going out, and there'd be 50 people that work on that as it went down the line. And I
Yeah.
kind of enjoyed that. But it starts off at lower paying. So I had to like
Mm,
accept that this industry starts lower. At the end of the day, 10 years down the road, all welders make great money. And
yeah.
that's, you got to keep
It's
your eye
it's
on the
putting in that
prize.
time, right? Yeah.
That's right. You just got to put in that time. And some industries will pay you the money up front because of the danger or the risk or the uncomfortableness of the job.
Yeah.
Other companies won't because it doesn't have those factors. But don't ever think that it won't pay off because down the line, 10 years later, everyone's making great money. So,
Hmm. Yeah. I have to keep reminding myself that this first job is not going to be the last job.
mhm.
I'm getting
Well,
started,
who knows? Maybe it is.
you never know, right? You never know. You talk to some guys that have been at the same place for 25 years. They might have started off at a company and just kept going, and
Yeah,
loved it.
some
So,
people just fall in love with it, and I know quite a few people like that. I myself am a rambling merchant of skills, so I have been
love that.
all over, but I mean, that was a choice I made because every time I was at a job, I felt like, I'd get to a time limit where I felt like I wasn't learning anything anymore, and I had this desire to bounce. And it was never angry or ugly. It was never like, I don't like this company. It was just like, I think personally, I'm done with this part of my journey and I'm
Yeah.
moving on
Yeah.
to the next one.
You've learned enough that you can take all that information you've gained from that company and move elsewhere. I mean, yeah, I've done that in other industries as well. Like, I was a cook for a number of years. I'd work at one
Mhm.
place for a couple of years, learn everything I can, take that information and move somewhere and grow. You're growing the whole time, right?
Well, and I think people like yourselves that have been in other industries and come into welding are also incredibly important to our industry because you're kind of like a check valve. And I'll
Mm,
explain because you come in with experience of for yourself cooking industry, the art industry, the office industry in terms of management, and now you're on the floor as a welder. And I think that will give you a keen perspective of how perhaps some things could be better, some things could be maybe arranged differently, some things could be maybe looked at because you'll have a perspective that's not singular, which many companies suffer from is a singular perspective where everyone's got the same background, everyone's got the same job, and you look at a problem and everyone comes up with the same solution.
hmm.
And sometimes people that come in from other industries have a little different, angle.
Yeah, a little edge, a different perspective, like you said, right? Like I
Yeah,
can I can
and
bring
and
all
that's
these
something
different.
that I would advise you to, make sure that when you go in for your interviews, express that. Say,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm 30. I just went through this welding program, but I've had a lot of success in other industries, and I think I can bring some new perspectives." And trust me, that attitude will help you.
Yeah, that's a great point. Absolutely. I mean, you look at my resume and like we've already talked about, it's all over the place. I spent 10 years kind of rambling around like you did. And yeah, so that's a great way to frame that. I like that a lot.
And now you're looking at another thing that you brought up to me is steel fab.
Hmm.
And that was my second red seal is steel fab. And that was basically my love of mathematics, which it makes me such a nerd that people just want to punch me in the face. But I do have a love of math and like tech and computers and design. I love all that stuff,
Yeah.
which just fits so well. So for me, fab was like the mixing of work and hobbies, where it was
Hmm.
like I love all this like nerd stuff. And I also love welding stuff. And if you put them together, you get a fabricator. Um, is that kind of what you see in terms of fabrication, or what in your perspective is makes fabrication interesting?
I think very simply put, it's the ability to dream something up, come up
Hmm.
with an idea for something, and draw it out, figure out all the dimensions, and put it together. So something from your imagination into a reality. I just love that idea. And that's definitely a big thing that brought me into welding too. In general, is the ability to you see all these cool metal products out there and cool things that people have dreamt up, and now I can do that. I can turn around and manufacture something myself, with those skills. So I think that's pretty amazing, to be honest. And I would love to be able to get into that as a fabricator, definitely.
Yeah, and is there a fabrication program in your area? Like, I'm not sure. Very few colleges have an actual what's called a plate fitter or metal fabrication course.
Mm. We had a taste for that at Sheridan. The course was like welding and metal fabrication, so we had
Okay.
some sheet metal fabrication and some other programs like that as well, but not a dedicated metal fabrication program like you're talking about, probably.
Yeah, because it is its own red seal, and it does
Hmm.
have its own set of outcomes and requirements, its own interprovincial ticket.
Hmm.
And for the people that don't know how the steel fab program works, because there's not a lot of information, or I always find that apprenticeship information sometimes isn't clear or clearly defined.
It could
Um,
be hard to find,
it
definitely.
can be hard to find, yeah. And the apprenticeship red seal endorsement for I believe it's called the metal fabrication online is only a written exam. There is no practical exam for your RSE, your Red Seal in Steel Fab, but it is a 8,100 hour or 4 year required proof of indentureship. So that's the
Right.
tricky part, right? So it's not like you can't just go and challenge. I challenged my Red Seal, which was incredibly, I would say, idiotic of myself to just throw myself into this and be like, I'm going to go challenge this test,
I can
which
do
was
this.
incredibly hard
Yeah.
exam. I studied for 6 months by myself to go for this test, and I passed with like a 74, like just barely.
Wow.
And I was sweating bullets, and I'm pretty good at this stuff. So I
Under
would
pressure.
recommend,
Yeah.
yeah. So I would recommend people that are looking at steel fab to go to school. Number one,
Hmm.
because there are programs out there that are great, and I believe quite a few of them are now offered online. This is the beauty of COVID. I hate to say the beauty of COVID, but the the changes in our educational systems COVID pressed us into now have some advantages. Is that many courses that were very geographically specific have now opened up their doors, so you can
Hmm.
take metal fabrication, at least the theory parts of it, online, which are great. Which is heavy trigonometry, geometry, layout, and the use of CNC equipment, which I think is incredibly useful for everybody, because to be a registered fabricator, you have to know how to use every piece of equipment on the floor and how to maximize its potential, right?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, CNC is a whole different genre in itself. Definitely, this is a lot to learn just in that one side, that one
So
tool.
so back to you coming out of the welding program now.
Hmm.
Where do you feel your strengths lie? Like, let's say I'm an interviewer and I'm saying, Mike, thank you
Oh
for
boy.
applying at my job. I got your resume here in front of me. I see that you're a recent graduate from Sheridan College. Fantastic program. Um, what would you say are your strengths in terms of welding?
Oh geez. Good question.
I'm putting you on the spot, but this is how it feels, and
This is the
all
interview
the
process. I know.
listeners are going to learn right now.
Exactly. It's like a little practice interview. Exactly. I think my strengths, honestly, when it comes to welding, is just my ability to learn quickly. Um, I'm able to pick a process up fairly fast, I think, and adapt to like a new way of working. So, I come into a new shop, I figure out how things are operating, and learn really quickly. The ins and outs of that. So, yeah, that's my strength, I think.
Okay, and out of the welding processes you took in school,
Mhm.
which one is your best weld?
Probably I have the most hours with stick. Um, yeah, I spent a lot of time doing that in all positions, so I'm pretty competent there, I would say. But towards the end of the program, I was doing a lot more TIG, and I found that I really taken a love for that. And it takes a lot more practice, I think, but that's part of what drew me to it. Is you really do have to practice and put in the time to get good with that.
Okay, and in the stick world, would you prefer a 60-10 or a 70-18?
17, 18 all the way.
That was a trick question. No one picks 60s.
No, come on.
Well, out in the West, it's still the lifeblood of the pipeline, the 60-10. Even
Standard,
though this
exactly.
is an argument that has been had many times with me in my circles, but you know, and I will give you I guess a piece of advice there is
please.
maybe don't focus so much on TIG
Yeah, fair enough.
because no level ones are getting a TIG job. I'll tell you that right now.
No,
That's
that's
just not
very
a
fair.
job. That's not one you give to the level one guys. Because all the old guys there that have been there 20 years, they're taking all the gravy work. Trust me.
They're the ones that want to do that. Exactly.
Yeah, because that's the cleanest, nicest job with a nice, comfy chair and the
I was
spinner,
gonna
and
say you get to sit the whole time mostly. It's nice and clean. It's quiet. Yeah,
there's no fumes, and
yeah,
you're already like that's not the job the guy coming in out of school's getting.
yeah. No, I'm definitely with you on that one.
And it's funny because I'm not the best TIG welder. I'm pretty good. I'm
Mhm.
I'm trying to weasel myself. We're talking about conferences that are coming up, and I've been challenged by Jason Becker from weld.com to a weld off in
Oh yeah,
FabTech. And so that we're talking, we were just talking this morning by email, just like what processes we should do. It's like, well, we should keep it secret. So
yeah.
like you just pull like a process out of a hat, and
Oh,
that's
and
what
then
we
you're
got to
just expected
weld.
to do it.
Yeah, and it's like, and he's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna have to practice. I'm not very good at so and so, but I'm really good at TIG." And I was like, "Ooh, well, TIG's not my best, but I guess I better start practicing. I got a TIG machine in my garage, so I better get to it."
That's the challenge. Exactly. Yeah, you got to practice,
So now that you're out of school, I'm gonna ask you a completely self-serving question here.
please.
Have you been in touch, or have you had any information about your local CWB Association chapter as a possible support for yourself?
Honestly, no, not really. I am a member of the CWB Foundation group there, but I have not been in contact with the local chapter at all. No.
So that is something that we gotta fix, Mike. We gotta fix
Yeah.
this. And there are fantastic chapters in the GTA area. There's quite a few. This is something that I gotta figure out how to get the colleges to really get on board and get the students all signed up because it's free. You get
Yeah.
a bunch, there's career portals on there, there's scholarships, there's bursaries, there's chances to get free gear and supports and training, and it's like, man, why is this not on everyone's table, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we're handed so much information when we're at college too.
It
Some of
might just
that
get
stuff,
buried.
some
Yeah.
gets buried. I think it's unfortunate, but yeah, we're given so many different opportunities and options when we are in school that it's probably just missed. I would think, but you're right. I mean, we should absolutely be in contact with the CWB group there. Yeah,
Well, make sure you go to the website, go to the association page and
I will.
say, I want to be a member, and it'll go down. You'll have the whatever chapter's closest to you and become a member. And then you should start receiving information and emails about cool stuff. Because one of the things you brought up was the lack of career fairs this year. And
Hmm.
that's actually something that we're working on right now is we are offering free career fairs for any college in the country.
That's great.
So, and
Virtually,
so
I
that
imagine.
virtually, and
Yeah.
I think once we get opened up, we'll keep it because
Mhm.
why can't it be both, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think of Ontario, what happens, or I mean, it even happens in my province, in every province, you think of the major centers, but then there is always these remote colleges where they have one or two welders and they're producing some great little, welding programs,
Hmm.
but they're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the boonies, outside the main centers, and they kinda always get left out because 'cause they're not gonna
Yeah, they're
drive
forgotten
16
about.
hours. Yeah, they're
Yeah.
not gonna come drive 16 hours to do a career fair that they very much wanna be a part of. That
Sure.
way, I think we maintain the virtual thing forever now, kind
Hmm.
of as an avenue.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Honestly, I just found out actually that the Skills Canada competition is going on this year, and they're
Mhm,
doing it remotely somehow. They're bringing in judges
mhm.
to each of the locations, and I think that's pretty amazing that they're able to do that. I know it's probably a whole lot more effort, but yeah, it's pretty incredible.
Well, I hope we can really represent well, because I was in Russia 2 years ago with our Canadian champ,
Hmm.
and we got ninth in the world for welding,
Wow.
and I was really hoping to build on that and be a part of the groups going forward and getting better than ninth, but COVID really is tough, and I think, like, I know I'm on a panel for skills next Friday, and
Hmm.
then I think we have the Canadian skills in mid June. And whoever the winner is for Canada, let's get out there. Let's win, win, win. I think it's in Shenzhen, China this year, maybe
Oh
the
wow.
finals. And if you need a hand, reach out to me. I was with the last Canadian winner.
Hmm.
I got a few tips for you. So, um,
There you go.
and it was a great experience. You know what?
That sounds
The
incredible.
best experience about being at the international skills may have been in losing, or not losing, but getting ninth,
Hmm.
because I got to watch what the winners did and learn. Like, I mean,
Hmm.
some of the welding programs in the world, man, unbelievable. And we hold our own in Canada, considering we're probably have a tenth the funding that some of
Hmm.
these countries put in. So,
Smaller population, smaller funding. Yeah,
mhm.
everything. Yeah, that must be amazing to see. I haven't even considered international, work and travel for that, but that's incredible. Yeah.
Is that something that would be on your plate as a young welder? Do you like? I mean, it sounds like you're married. I don't know if you have kids or
Mhm.
not, but do you think about international work at all?
Yeah, I am married. I no kids, so the option to travel is there, and move and work somewhere else. I don't know how all of that works, to be honest with you, but it would take some digging to figure out. But yeah, that would definitely interest me. Yeah.
Well, I know they're looking for work on the East Coast for the shipbuilding. I know they're looking for
Mhm.
work in the West Coast for shipbuilding. They got LNG in BC. They got the oil fields ramping back up in Alberta, and here in
Mhm.
Saskatchewan, we're opening up like four new mines.
Mhm.
So if Ontario's quiet, there's lots of work in around Canada. If you end up in my neck of the woods, you got to make sure you let me know.
I would 100% do that. Yep. Yeah.
All right, Mike. Well, this has been fantastic, and I think this is a really great, conversation for young people coming out into trades, and also for anybody that's out there in the GTA area. What can we do to help support, people that are new in the trades like Mike? How can we get the students coming out of the colleges interacting with businesses and companies to help find work? Can we somehow, as an association here, speaking on our behalf in the CWB group, what can we do to help young welders getting into the field now and going forward?
That's a great
uh,
question. Yeah.
yeah, well, who knows, maybe someone will answer it for us.
I hope so.
All right, Mike, is there anything else that you'd like to say before I ask you the final question?
The only thing I would like to say is just to shout out a couple of people, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, you shout out away.
I just want to say thanks to my wife, my family, and all my teachers at Sheridan College who supported me through the last year and a half of studying. It was a crazy time, but it I got through it and thrived. So I'm really happy to have completed the program. So yeah,
And you know what? Let's extend that shout out to all the educators in this country.
yeah,
The educators conference is coming up June 1st and 2nd, which is normally in person. Hundreds of teachers from across the country getting together to talk and share. It's virtual this year. I hope lots of educators sign up, but regardless of whether they're there or not, at the association here, at the foundation CWB group, we we commend and honor the educators that are navigating this crazy time and still getting their students through. And I know it's been tough and in many cases modified and
hmm,
changed from what would be optimal or ideal, but they never stopped, and they
yeah.
didn't stop trying, and they didn't stop caring, right?
It's definitely been a struggle. I've talked to all of them. They all had to adapt to these new modes of teaching, and some thrived at it. Others, had a really hard time. But everyone, I think, persevered and made the best of it. So yeah, shout out to all of those guys and
Awesome,
girls.
thanks. And so, Mike, for the final question, if for someone like yourself, give them a piece of advice. If you're mid 30s, or you've been trying a few different careers and now you're thinking about getting back into welding, or trying out welding, kind of
Mhm.
sight unseen, don't know anything about it, and you're looking at it as a career, what advice would you give that person entering or seeking this type of work?
I think the one thing I would say is it's never too late. I was 31 years old when I started, which isn't old by any stretch of the imagination. But I had my doubts about it starting at this age and going into a new career. But it's never too late. You can always try something new. If it doesn't work out, you've lost. Well, not lost, but you've spent a year of your life gaining a new skill at the very least, and at the most, you found a new career that you can make great money at and thrive at, and spend the rest of your life doing if you really love it. So yeah.
Awesome. Those are great words of advice. And also, I would like to add to that education is never a bad choice. the money invested, the time invested at the time can feel like a burden,
Yep.
I know that I've been back to school many times, and it's always tough and exhausting. But now, I'm 45. I've had this crazy long career all over the place, and everything I've learned in every school, in every classroom, has served me
Yeah.
in some way or another.
Yep. Yeah. It's never a waste of time. Absolutely not.
Never.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, Mike, thank you very much for taking this time with me today, and for our audience. I really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks a lot, Max. I appreciate it. It's been really fun.
And to all the listeners out there, thanks so much for staying tuned to the CWB Association podcast. We got lots of great guests coming up. Keep it rolling. We love hearing the stories. Send us your the people that you would like to hear on the show, or any recommendations. We're always taking them. I follow up with every single one. And let's grow that list. Let's find all the different sectors and demographics and representations. I want them all on the show. And this space is for you, the community, the people out there. This is 100% by the association for our networks. So let's keep that thriving. So thanks a lot to all the listeners.
We hope you enjoyed the show.
You've been listening to the CWB Association Welding Podcast with Max Ceron. If you enjoyed what you heard today, rate our podcast and visit us at cwbassociation.org to learn more. Feel free to contact us if you have any questions or suggestions on what you'd like to learn about in the future. Produced by the CWB Group and presented by Max Ceron. This podcast serves to educate and connect the welding community. Please subscribe, and thank you for listening.